Hello, hello, Justin. So good to be on here.
Welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure to have you here, or actually, I should say, it's such a pleasure to be here with you at your beautiful home. We are overlooking the San Francisco Bay. What bridge are we looking at there?
The Bay Bridge.
The Bay Bridge.
Yes.
Yes, stunning view. Couldn't ask for a better place to record. So, Michael is the CEO and founder of Garten, a tech-empowered employee experience and well-being platform that top companies across the nation utilize to create workplace well-being.
Well said. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah. So just to kind of kick off, I want to dig into your origin story. Obviously, I know you incredibly well, but in your own words, how'd you get to where you are now? Take us back.
Yeah, it was quite the process of a search for meaning for me. I worked for a number of really great and fascinating companies, anywhere from a big tech company, Microsoft, as a tech product manager, to working at Bain & Company, to working at Bridgewater Associates. And really enjoyed the types of problems and people that I was interacting with, but I was sort of lacking a sense of meaning in my life. And I just couldn't put my finger on it. There was just something in me that said, you should be doing something different. What are you doing for the greater of humanity? And so I started kicking off the search for meaning. And what I found is that my grandma in Berlin, Germany, has been a big inspiration in my life. So for more than 50 years, she was a medical doctor with a very stressful job life. And I observed her never getting any chronic diseases or any illness. And her message was really simple. It was all about going to bed on time, eating from her organic garden, being around good friends and family, having a healthy exercise regime for her that was actually working in the garden, and just really contrasted that to the experiences I had in the workplace. And generally, I basically come to realize that I was part of a really high-performance team, just like a high-performance athlete as a knowledge worker, and found myself eating, lots of peanut M&Ms and drinking soda, and not going to bed on time, and doing the exact opposite of what my grandma told me. Mm-hmm. And it was just because it was available, and that's what was in the workplace, and we just didn't think very much about it. But if you think about a high performance athlete, would you feed them white sugars, white fat, white bread, and then eating that, getting your insulin spikes up because your sugar crashing, your blood glucose levels dropping? You wouldn't really, because that doesn't lead to high performance. Yet we kept doing that in the workplace. And there wasn't a lot of intention or design besides it. It was just the way things were being done. There wasn't any yoga being instructed at that time either. And I just kept complaining about it. And then at some point I realized, hey, this is really meaningful to me. And I want to create a company around the mission of empowering people to live healthy and blissful lives. And that was how Garten was born. Back at Stanford, because I knew that I also needed to put myself in an environment of greatness where great companies get created. And I knew that Stanford was the right environment for me at that time to be able to create this company.
So how did you walk us through a little bit more granular detail? How did you go? You're at Bridgewater, mm-hmm. and you're like, I want to find more meaning in my life. What were your next steps? Like, was going to Stanford the first idea that popped into your head, or did you try like reading books or taking courses, or how did you end up going to Stanford and kind of go from Bridgewater to Stanford to actually starting a company? Because it sounds like you just like woke up and went from Bridgewater and like then launched a company. But my guess is it took a a lot more kind of like soul searching?
It took a lot more than that. And part of that journey involved going on to long meditation retreats, doing things like landmark education, because I really just wanted to find my voice as well and figure out what really inspired me. And I also did a lot of experimentation. I helped a couple of friends with their startups. I tried my hand at something as well that didn't go super well, and I was quickly noticed that it didn't go well because my meaning and purpose wasn't in it. I was just experimenting and trying it out for the sake of trying it out, versus saying, okay, my heart and soul is really in this particular project that I'm pursuing. But I got a lot of experience. One of the companies that I helped was purpose.com, and they were scaling up a clean energy division and movement, and learned about how to scale movements there, and just did something that felt like I wanted to explore as a passion of mine as well. Yeah. And so it took a while. It took a number of years before I had the realization that, hey, I'm seeing these other entrepreneurs and what they're going through, and I tried my hand at a project as well. And I have some knowledge gaps in terms of how I want to go about starting the company and how I want to go about living this purpose and mission in my life. And I just knew I needed more education. And my intuition was Stanford was the right place for that.
Did you apply to any other schools, or was it just Stanford?
No, just one school.
Okay.
Just applied to Stanford, and that was it.
Put it all on black.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So when you're at Stanford, how long was it until you actually started Garten?
Yeah, so I actually came in with the intention of wanting to build a company. So I was thinking about it right away, but then didn't start with the business model creation until I got into a class called the Lean Launchpad that was taught, or that is still taught, by Steve Blank and the teaching team. And there, for the first time, I really learned the individual tools that you need in order to create that first business model. And so we walked through the startup business model canvas. We walked through things like customer development methodology and how to actually really understand what is it that customers and people really want, and how do you build something that people really love. And so that class was really foundational, and it changed my entire trajectory as an entrepreneur.
And that's where Garten was born, in that class.
That's where Garten, the business model, was born. Exactly.
That's awesome. What are some of the other companies that have come out of that class? Do any come to mind?
From what I know, there's been a few successful ones. One, I think, was Crave Jerky, I believe, came out of that class. And then one of my classmates also went on to start to continue her journey. I think it was Zoom Rights, if I'm not mistaken. I can look it up, but I think it's Zoom Rights.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, just Stanford alone, the number of companies that have come out of Stanford is pretty incredible. Everything, from Google and plenty of other top tech companies. It really is the epicenter of Silicon Valley technology startups. So how did you go from, concept to an actual company? And what was that first concept? Obviously Garten has been around for 8 years, over 8 years now, and has developed into a pretty large company with several different services, product lines, etc. But where did you start?
I started with the mission and the feeling of what I wanted to embody in the world. And so the mission was even set before the business model got created. And so that mission of empowering people to live healthy and blissful lives existed right away, essentially. And so the first things that we did is set the values together. And the values have changed a little bit over time, but the acronym hasn't. So the acronym is FORCE. Now it stands for fun and family, openness, results, curiosity, and empowerment. And so that acronym has not changed over time. And
I just have to jump in and share one fun anecdote. So those who've listened to the show know I'm a part of Garten founding team. And 2 or 3 years ago, Michael came to me and said, "Hey, Justin, we're looking at the values again to just make sure that they still make sense for us. Is there any ones that you want to make sure we keep or you're particularly passionate about?" And I said, "Fun. We cannot change that value, because if we're not having fun, then what's the fucking point?" So I'm grateful that Michael has, kept that as the first value, and may just because of the acronym. But for me, personally, that one's incredibly important because I like to have fun. Obviously, everyone who listens to the show knows that, but
and fun is a big part of well-being as well. And I distinctly remember that conversation, actually. And even the conversation itself was fun. So
it's true. So that's great. So literally you started almost with like a macro view of
that's right,
mission, vision, and values. And then you actually came up with like, all right, what are we actually going to do? So what was that first kind of product or service that Garten had?
Yeah, the first thing that we ended up doing is, after we defined that, is getting space in the Stanford Venture Studio and work on essentially a healthy snack box subscription.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasoning was that what is the worst thing that we put into our bodies generally? And it's ultra processed, and I'm going to call them food-like substances, because when you're eating tons of preservatives and chemicals that are derived from substances, it's no longer food. It's more like a food-like substance, or it's super over-sugared with highly ultra-processed white sugar. It's not quite the same nutritional basis as eating, fresh strawberry or fresh blueberries, for example.
Yeah.
And so we said, let's clean that up and see where that goes. And that's essentially what we started with. And that's what we came to the Steve Blank class with as well.
Yeah. And I'm just going to jump in. I've shared this story before in another podcast episode, but Michael, he's not just making this up to create a beautiful story, that he actually started with the mission and the values first, because I met Michael in a class at Stanford because, I'd come back to Stanford to finish my undergraduate degree, also to find more heart and meaning in my work. And Michael's presentation, I don't even remember, barely remember him talking about the subscription service. And he probably did, but I was just so blown away about his focus on the mission and the values, literally talking about empowering people to live healthy and blissful lives, and his love of all things well-being, meditation, yoga, martial arts, and just living a life full of well-being. And at the time I was like, I need more friends that are A, my age, and B, are actually like really good people. And so, I approached Michael after his presentation, not because I wanted to be a part of the founding team, because I had no idea that would come, but because I wanted to be a part of someone who had a mission in life and business like that. So it's definitely authentic, and I'm forever grateful that's always been the mission of the company, despite the challenges over the many years. So you launch that subscription service, then...
And by the way, the mission is also what attracted my now wife, Ada, into my life. Because until I shared with her, this is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, she wasn't quite as attracted to me at that point. But then once she heard that, and this was, do you mind if I tell this story real quick? So we basically met on July 4th, and one of our friends introduced us, but she basically just came to the States from China 2 weeks ago, and she was like, "Oh, I know July 4th is a special day in the United States. Where do we go to see fireworks?" And my friend was like, "Oh, I know somebody who can lead us there." after we saw the fireworks, she was tired and so on. But I said, hey, everybody, why don't we go to StartX? I'll show you where I'm incubating the company right now. And, we had a desk for 3 people at that point. But then I really started to talk about the mission and empowering people to live healthy and blissful lives, sharing my story with my grandma. And then that was the moment when Ada told me that her light bulb went off and said, like, I want to be with this person. I really believe in him and I want to see this change in the world. So it's being authentic has served me really well in life. So I'm glad I went on to this entire journey to get to that stage.
In addition to having a noble mission in life, not just being authentic,
Of course.
but actually, striving for something that is beneficiary to not just you personally, but really to everybody. To give the audience context, StartX is Stanford's accelerator for startup companies that are looking to grow and scale. So that's actually, where Michael and I met we met in class, but it was on a lunch date there that we actually met up. Actually, it was for coffee, and then we went for a walk. And it was during that walk, Michael told me about this girl that he just met, which is funny because it's all full circle. He's a married man. I'm now at their place in San Francisco. Actually just got to see his wife, Ada, for the first time in 2 or 3 years because of the pandemic.
It's been a while.
I've seen her on Zoom videos, but this is the first time in person. So very special day, to reconnect with you in person. We've hung out plenty of times at Stanford, but to reconnect with Ada as well. All right, so you're in StartX.
Yeah, and just to put it on a timeline, so the Lean Launchpad class happened January to March of 2014, and then StartX was the summer and the fall of 2014. So just to give a bit of a timeline of the evolution.
Yep. Yeah, and so after our meeting, that was July or August. I think it was August. That was shortly after that you invited, or literally at that coffee date, you invited me to sit in on one of the strategy meetings, and then after the strategy meeting you asked if I'd like to join the company, and so that's how I actually became a founding team member of the company. And it's crazy, because I think Michael and I had the same kind of idea that the best way for us to change the trajectory of our life and to find more heart meaning is to put ourselves into an environment that is going to, empower that to really truly happen. And Michael went back to Stanford wanting to start a company, but really having no idea like how or when or what, but it all came together there. And he was surrounded by the people and given the kind of structure and the tools to do that. And then, I went back kind of looking for the same thing. I wanted to put myself in an environment that would help me find more heart and meaning and a more well-being focused life. And I found it too with Michael. So, I think the listeners are probably starting to see that, like, if you want to change your life, change your environment. I mean, it's the easiest thing to do. And most of us kind of just are maybe not super conscious of how much of an impact our environment has on us. Would you agree, Michael?
Yeah, I would agree. The way I define well-being as well is mind, body, and environment. And the environment is super key because there's a collective consciousness that we all contribute to. And if you're in a place that has lots of people wanting to change the world or wanting to stand for something for the better, then naturally you're going to be pulled into that direction. Or if you're in a place that has a lot of depression or difficulties or drama, you're also going to be pulled into these more difficult situations. And so I absolutely agree.
Yeah. All right. Walk us from like StartX to kind of like the next big milestones. So you have the dragon join the company, obviously.
Which was a process as well.
Yeah. Which, I haven't talked about. I don't know if we want to talk about it. Yeah, actually, I'll share super quick because I think it is important. So and the reason I want to share this is because I think it'll benefit a lot of listeners and the audience who have a safe job. So prior to Garten, I worked in Hollywood nightlife and kind of like in the event space. And I was very comfortable in that space of events and experiences. And I had been working part-time for a company to make some money that did experiential events. And when Michael asked me to join the company, I was definitely wanting to do it, but I was so scared because I'd never done something like that before. I didn't know how to, help build a company. I didn't know how to sell the products and services that we had. And I was super scared, super scared. And I basically went to my wife, then girlfriend, and was like, I don't know if I should do it. And she was like, I believe in Garten. And I think you should do it. I think it's going to like help take you where you want to go. And then I came to Michael and kind of shared the same thing with Michael. And then Michael was like, if I remember this correctly, he's like, do you want me to hold your hand? Like, I'll hold your hand while we do this. Like, and I was like, yeah, pretty much. I do need you to hold my hand.
Here's the paper. Here's where you sign.
Yeah. So, but I literally, Michael's he has such a big heart and is just, I've always felt like I've been able to be very open with Michael. So I was able to share my fears with you, Michael, and you literally just, you didn't judge me. You weren't like, hey, quit being like a little bitch and just like join. You were like, Justin, like, I'll hold your hand while we do this. And like together, like we'll do this. And I'm incredibly grateful because I was so close to just taking the safe bet and just going like full time the other way because I was already making money doing that. Michael, you were like, yeah, I can't really pay you, but I can pay you commissions. And then like eventually we can pay you a salary. And the crazy thing is it was my dream to be a part of a Stanford startup. And I still almost walked away because I was so scared of the unknown. And, for the audience, I think the things that I want to point out is, often when you follow your dreams, it is really scary and you're going to have to do a lot of stuff that you've never done before and don't know how to do. But the cool thing is if you partner up with the right people, they'll help A, hold your hand, and B, they'll help you figure it out. And they'll support your growth. And Michael really has done that for me in so many different ways, foundational to so many key kind of well-being practices in my own life. So yeah, Michael held my hand and that's how I joined the company.
Thank you for sharing that story. I'm also incredibly grateful that you had the support of Carly and that she saw the kind of vision of you that you wanted to be, and she held that for you as well. So my big gratitude to her as well.
Yeah, if it wasn't for her, honestly, I don't think I would have ever like joined Garten as a founding team member. I would have, like, if I was by myself, I would have like been like, yeah, this is too scary.
That's sometimes the easy answer, but maybe not the right one for us. And it's beautiful. Just remembering it brings me a lot of joy and bliss looking back at it. All the early days were just so much fun. It was, I must say, I was super scared as well because I'm like, oh, I'm going to bring somebody on. I'm going to be responsible for their life. We're still figuring this thing out, but it's going to be great. We're going to have a lot of fun together. And so a lot of good times. And it just showed that we wanted to build a really special, different type of company where you can really be yourself and not check yourself at the door. You can be yourself. You can express who you truly are. We're welcoming of that, of your uniqueness, and then become the best version of you that you want to evolve into. And that was really my belief, because if we just have a mission and it's empty, we don't live it ourselves. we don't empower ourselves, we don't live bliss every day, then what is a mission for? I mean, then it's just lip service. It's not authentic.
Totally true. And another story that kind of, helps validate that is when, in the first few weeks of me becoming a part of the company, I share with you like, hey, Michael, the past I came from, I worked like 7 days a week. I was on call 7 days a week. I worked crazy hours, and I don't want to work like that again. Like, I came back to find, more health and balance in my life. And you were like, have you heard of Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Work Week? And I was like,
I remember that.
Hell yeah. And you're like, well, as long as you, get your work done, I don't care how many hours you work or don't work. As long as you hit your goals and like, perform exceptionally, like you can do it in whatever manner you want. And I was like, oh my God, this is a dream come true. So, yeah. So how did we go from StartX to the next big jump, which at least in my mind was Y Combinator, which, Y Combinator has produced so many incredible companies. How did we get from StartX to Y Combinator?
Yeah, we before we did that, we really cemented our business model first. So up until this point, we're doing subscription snack boxes for companies. And for one of the big, really big celebrations that we had early on in Steve Blank's class was that at one point Apple placed an order, and it was the VP of Design's group that placed a snack order for us. And we're like, did Apple just place an order? Let me like LinkedIn stalk this person. Like, oh my God, this is a real order. This is amazing. And so we had all this support and benefit from amazing companies like that are still with us today. And so again, big gratitude for believing in us, because it was literally a website with an e-commerce interface that me and Kent built over 2-3 weeks and made work. And so we had a strong customer base, but then we also started seeing that as we went into some of these customer locations, they weren't just doing snacks. They were providing an entire experience for their employees around coffee and fruits and even catered meals. And so I knew in order to really make an impact, we had to provide all of these different types of aspects as well. And what we did then in November, we had our first customer that was doing a full service, what was known in the industry as micro kitchens and what we now call garden kitchen offering. And so that was November 2014. And that really propelled our growth, because now you're starting to deal with enterprise level contracts. I think that starting contract was about $300,000 or so a year. And then me and Justin together figured out, how do we attract more companies like that? And the next year was all about that. And I think we grew something like 10x in 2015 as a result of it. And so it was super fun to see how that business model change and formulation led to it. And that then convinced Y Combinator to invest in us as well, because they saw, oh, you figured out this model, you're starting to prove it with metrics. You can actually use the summer experience of Y Combinator to further enhance your metrics and attract a lot of investor interest over time. And so summer 2016, I graduated from Stanford, went into Y Combinator, and that was a really exciting milestone for us.
Yeah. It was a crazy time, and that was, I still remember my first like sales meeting. I'll never forget it, because I'd gone to a couple with you where you kind of led the meetings to pitch companies to sign up to use what we used to be called Oh My Green, and we failed to mention that. And it was the tagline was Oh My Green, like friends with benefits but healthy, or something like that. At least that's what we said internally. But initially the the company was I don't think we ever put that on any customer
we just called it food with benefits.
Oh, food with benefits.
The more PC version, exactly.
Yeah. I think we just joked internally. It was like friends with benefits, but healthy. Or maybe that was just me. What I would say to my friends. So basically, during the time of Y Combinator, and prior to that, you and I went to a lot of sales meetings together trying to get companies to sign up for our services to have us manage their snack programs, their kind of like employee food experiences. And, I really learned by listening to you. But then when I went and did my first sales meeting by myself, I literally remember my hands were shaking, I was sweating, and my voice was quavering. And it was just like, it's just crazy thinking about how far we've come and, how like I've developed in someone who, now is like talking on a microphone and has a podcast and all this stuff and super outgoing online.
I think for both of us, we consistently had the attitude of let's just figure it out. A problem will arise, but there's always a way to figure it out together.
Oh, yeah.
I've never started really a company and scaled it the way that I did Garten. And so there was quite a few challenges we had to figure out together.
100%. I mean, we were selling things and then building them, essentially. Like we would literally be like, oh, that's what the customer wants? Okay, yeah, we can do that. But wait a minute. We don't do that yet. It's okay, we'll build it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that's how a lot of companies actually scale and grow is as they're going through that process, the customer asks them for the things that they want or that they need. And the company was like, oh, great, cool, we'll do that. Even though like they don't do that. And then they build to that need. And it's kind of scary because Michael says this all the time. It's like flying a ship or a airplane and like changing the engine at the same time, or flying a ship and building it while you're flying it. So it's pretty nerve-wracking, but fortunately Michael has a very grounded presence in his life that really empowered the entire company. So, Michael, what was the first company benefit that you provided to me and others?
Because of its impact on me, it was a transcendental meditation benefit. And I learned about it when I was working for Bridgewater. And literally within the first 3 months of starting, I remember Ray Dalio basically calling a town hall and bringing on stage David Lynch, a quantum physicist and a neuroscientist. And I was just really blown away that this is a key emphasis for Ray, because he called it one of his secrets to success. And once I started doing it and doing it for multiple years, twice a day, 20 minutes each time, I just really saw the benefits and clarity of what I wanted to do, who I am, clarity in that life can be a lot better than what people usually think life can be. And so because of its deep impact on me, and I can certainly chat about more meditative experiences that I've had just to highlight some of the changes I went through. But because of that, it was the first benefit I wanted to offer to everyone. And Justin was very gracious to try it out and to trust me. And
I think I might have been the first person to actually do it in the company.
I think you
first or second.
I think you were,
yeah. And so I believe that was when you finally offered it. It was April of 2015, at least when it was offered to me, because you're like, okay, he's stuck around for a year. I can actually offer this to him. And now I can happily say that I haven't missed a day of meditation in over 7 years, because April just
that's phenomenal
passed. And I remember, I just wanted to share with the audience again, how foundational this has been in my own life. And I think it's the reason that Michael has been or one of the reasons Michael has been so successful building this company. Prior to meditating, I was literally racked with so much anxiety, helping build this company and trying to find like my own footing, that I would literally cry in the shower because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And the meditation, after a few months of that, I definitely started to not only like calm down and experience less meditation, but my ability to really succeed in my role as a B2B executive salesperson, like skyrocketed like crazy. And that was one of the things Michael said that would probably happen is Justin, like, your career growth will radically increase once you start meditating. Like, that will be one of the benefits. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But like, heck, I'm super into like personal development of all types, so I'm going to give this a shot and see what happens. And I think, that practice that you offered to really all the employees has been foundational to our ongoing success over the years, especially the last couple years with pandemic shutting down all the offices. So StartX to Y Combinator, then where do we go from there?
Yeah, before we go next, I just wanted to mention too, it sounds a little bit crazy to think that, just a simple mental technique is something that can radically improve and change your life. But all it does really is just it basically makes more of who you truly are visible on the outside. It removes the stress, it removes the gunk in your nervous system, it removes, cortisol levels, and even protects you from heart attacks. And I think there's a 50% less chance of heart attacks. So it has mental benefits, physical benefits, environmental benefits on everyone. And it works really simply by basically you get a mantra, you repeat the mantra. So it's really simple and effortless. And what's happening underneath is that, and this is one of the reasons why I was so drawn to it, is the neuroscientists, when Ray...
Real quick, I have to interrupt because we totally didn't tell people. Not everyone in the audience is going to know who Ray Dalio is, but he's like literally one of the most successful like hedge fund owners and, leaders in the world. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world. And so just to give context, it's not just like some random person at some random company, but an incredibly successful person. So sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the context. But the thing that really drew me to the technique as well is I studied cognitive science in undergrad, and the neuroscientist, what he did is he basically put on an EEG cap to measure the brain waves of, I believe it was his daughter, and then told her, okay, you have this brain cap on, now go meditate. And literally within 2 seconds, her entire brainwave signature changed. So everything in her brain became very synchronized. She started exhibiting what's known as alpha wave coherence everywhere in the brain. And so by starting just to meditate, she started adding this brainwave signature. And basically, neuroscientists describe this as a restful alertness, where you're deeply, deeply rested, yet you have complete focus, complete alertness to everything that's going on around you. And that's the state that transcendental meditation cultivates. It's known as a different state of consciousness, a state of consciousness known as transcendental consciousness. And the beautiful thing is, the more that you do it, and every session that you have, the more you infuse your alpha waves into your brainwave patterns. The more you do it, the more it sticks with you in activity as well, until you finally reach a stage where it's just completely permanent and you're always acting from that field and that state. And when I saw this, I was just blown away. It's like, wow, there's actual physical evidence that something in my brain changes. I want that. And then over the many years that I've practiced, I've just noticed how much calmer I'm in situation, even though the situations may be super stressful, like COVID was, and we can talk about that, probably the two toughest years of my life. It gave me this deep anchor this deep calmness, and I just knew what I had to do as a next step, and so that's again why I brought it to the company and have it as a benefit.
I mean, I was doubtful at first, and I did my kind of own research, and basically, as lame as this may sound, one of the reasons I totally gave a shot is because I found out that several people that I really thought highly of did it. People like Hugh Jackman, George Lucas, Oprah, and others. And I was like, okay, they're all super high performers.
Tim Ferriss, I believe, does it as well.
Tim Ferriss, like, yeah. And so I was like, okay, if it's working for them, maybe it'll work for me. So yeah. All right. After Y Combinator, where does Garten go from there?
Yeah, we basically pre-pandemic, we've grown year over year 124%. So 2019 was one of our best years ever. We've built a complete large-scale leadership team, C-level team, VP level team, grew the company to close to almost 700 employees at that point. And then a pandemic comes and everything flips, where we go from growing to losing 90% of our revenue, from having to downsize multiple times. And so we had to completely reimagine and restabilize and just survive COVID, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say more than survive, we actually figured out how to thrive. So we ended up launching, new services and business lines that allowed us to continue to, bring health and bliss to people wherever they were. And, we further developed our offerings in addition to furthering our actual execution of our mission. And I think, like I said, I think the fact that we, many of us meditate, and there's just like a true belief in health and well-being for not only the companies that we serve, but actually also our internal employees and like the people that make up Garten. So this is probably a good time to, talk about Garten Time. No pun intended there with the double timing. So let's chat a little bit about Garten Time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just mention too that I agree what Justin said. It was really a way of saying, okay, we have this external factor that we couldn't predict, that we didn't know was going to happen. How do we make this into a gift? And so that mental mindset, I don't think would have been available if we didn't do all these different well-being practices, because from an outside investor and our board member standpoint was you basically had a 1% chance of survival. And I've heard many times from outside investors and board members that we're really inspired by your resilience and how you've navigated this. Because it was sure death. What company survives 90% reduction in revenue? What company survives downsizing from 700 people to 30 people at one point? But it gave us the opportunity to really reimagine, how do we operate as a company in the world? How do we reset? How do we make it a gift? And one of the things that we doubled down on, was well-being practices. We wanted to be more and more authentic with what we said we would, even in the worst times. And I'll get to that in a second. And then 2 is to reimagine what our business model and operating model looked like, and how can we use this as an opportunity to restructure ourselves. And we went from a full logistics company to a tech platform company during this time, in order to, as you said, thrive coming out of COVID, so that we can scale very quickly coming out of it, so that we can basically be in, one of the challenges we had before is that every time we went into a new city, we had to put a lot of money down, a lot of CapEx, as it's called, in order to build facilities, whether it's culinary facilities or warehousing facilities. There was a large amount of investment involved in that. And that often was very challenging. So we couldn't be in all locations very quickly. And we often had to turn down customers who were in, 15 locations, including Canada. And we basically said, let's use this as a time where we can redesign our model. And so we went to a local operator and platform model where we now work with the best-in-class operators in these different cities. And this leads to us, for example, being able to scale into Canada in a few weeks' time, versus it would have taken a year plus of planning and preparation, because we had to find all the suppliers, would have to find all the permits, the licenses, the right labor pool, and so on. And we definitely tried to make the best out of the situation that was presented to us. Yeah.
Amazing. Before we talk about Garten Time, we got 6 minutes.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can push it back at all, or if we should do a follow-up, because it's going to be pretty hard to.
How much time do you think we need?
As much as you can get.
Okay.
Just so I don't have to force it. But
sure.
But if you can't, like if you could get 30 minutes, I think that'd be perfect. But if you can only get 10 or 15, that's fine.
Probably another 10 I can give you.
Okay. So till 2:10?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew this was going to happen. We should have started right when I got here. And
that's okay.
Yeah.
It's just good content that we were chatting about.
Yeah, it's good.
And I feel much more settled after having eaten.
Yeah. It's all good. If we don't get it all, we'll do a follow-up.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be a follow-up, because there's going to be lots of things to talk about again.
Awesome. So back to the show. The life of a CEO, having to move meetings around. So we were just talking, about our rebirth during
the garden's renaissance.
Yeah. Like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So what did you do internally during COVID? You talked about kind of like doubling down on, making sure that we were really living the mission internally. What were some of those developments?
The very first thing that we developed was this concept of Garten Time, and we initially called it Purposeful Pause, but then changed it into being known as Garten Time. And basically what it does, it gives you 2 30-minute time slots during the day to not work, but to get rest and pursue a well-being activity of your choice, as well as every Friday to do that as well. And so we effectively moved to a 4-day work week with additional rests in between. Because our belief as Garten is that maximum productivity comes from maximum rest, which is at odds with industrial thinking, because you usually think about, okay, how long can I run this machine? And the longer I run this machine, the more widgets I can produce. But knowledge working does not work that way. It's humans are not machines that you can run 24/7. Humans need rest, and they're at their best when they had great night of sleep, wonderful nutrition, great mental clarity, great social environment, great exercise habits, all of that. And so that was one of the first things that we implemented, because it's really key to who we are as a culture, and we wanted to take a stance for well-being in the worst of times.
Yeah. I'm going to step in and talk a little bit about it, just because it's been literally a long held dream to have a 4-day work week. And we started out with just Garten Time, like, twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. And then at first it was like every other Friday we get off, or like once a month, and then every other Friday. And then eventually Michael was like, all right, now every Friday is Garten Friday. And I will never forget, because I dreamed of a 4-day work week. And the really cool thing is, I believe it's called Parkinson's law, I forget. It's a law. Someone in the audience will know, and they can, send me messages about like what the exact law is, but basically the concept or the law is that work expands to fill the time that you give it. And this is incredibly true, because when we first started Garten Friday, I, for the first month or two, struggled to get all my work done Monday through Thursday. And then eventually I was like, all right, I'm just going to figure this out and I'm going to get it done, because it has been my dream to have a 4-day work week. And lo and behold, when I put like proactive conscious energy towards getting it figured out, I did it. And there are days like sometimes on Friday where I have to, take an hour meeting or do a couple of emails, but I would say 80% of the time or more, I do zero work on Fridays. I don't even open my inbox. I don't check Slack. I don't get any work calls or texts. I don't schedule any meetings or anything. And it's incredible what you can actually do and get done in even less time if you just like have a bit of intention or a lot of intention. And it's just been amazing to see, my own productivity. I had the biggest year of my life last year, doing over 10 million in sales myself. But only working 4 days a week. Like, what the heck? I started working less and performed even higher. And this is where Michael likes to say, Michael, you should say it.
Yes. The basis of maximum results is maximum rest, essentially.
Yeah. So this is something Michael has said since I've known him, is like, rest is the basis of like,
successful results. Yeah,
exactly. And I, for a long time, didn't really understand that, because I think most of us believe that in order to succeed more, we have to do more. But with Michael's personal philosophy and company philosophy that he works really hard to instill in all the employees or Garten ambassadors, is that you actually do less to do more.
Yes, exactly. The 80-20 principle.
Yeah.
Do less, accomplish more.
Yeah. So as we kind of start to wrap this up, couple questions, why should workplace well-being be a factor for leaders of companies?
Workplace well-being is a competitive advantage. And if you're not treating it as such, other companies will. And from my personal experience, having made well-being a non-negotiable, you basically say no to specific things. So I say no when there's a meeting that would overlap with my Kung Fu practice, for example. Or I will say no to really early meetings that will overlap with my transcendental meditation practice. And it's just a stance that I've started taking for myself. And I want to inspire all of our leaders at company Garten and then our customers to make that stance for themselves. There's just an enormous volume of research that supports this, whether it's on sleep, where if you have one bad night of sleep where you're only sleeping 4 hours, your immune system decreases by 60%, something Matthew Walker talks about. If you don't exercise, there's this whole body of research now that talks about myokines, which are basically chemicals produced by your muscles that can reach the blood-brain barrier and create happiness in the brain. And so what these researchers are saying, perhaps the best thing you can do for mental health is physical exercise. And then there's practices of detoxing, like fast mimicking diets or Ayurvedic practices where you go on retreats for a week or more and then come feeling like a baby with, a great digestive system, lots of bliss in your senses and so on. And there's other practices around just going to bed on time, having good behaviors, good routine, having a good social friendship circle, good community around yourself. And there's not one single silver bullet. There's not just a pill you can take and all of a sudden you're like super healthy, super well. It's a holistic approach that really matters. And that's a key element for companies to realize this needs to be holistic, yet also personalized to the individual And then when more people practice this within a company, then you start really deriving competitive advantage from it, because everybody will start to get more productive, more of themselves. They will more enjoy their work. They will more enjoy being around their colleagues. And it also increases and improves the entire environment as a result of that. And so it'll only be a matter of time before it's really established that that's a key element. And I just go back to the analogy around high performance athletes. How do they behave? What do they eat? When do they go to bed on time? Start thinking about your knowledge workers as high performance athletes, and then it'll really shift your mindset as well.
Yeah. I mean, thriving employees is a thriving company, right?
Exactly.
So there's so much more to cover, and I know you have a important meeting coming up, so we're going to wrap this up. Any last words of wisdom? And we'll for sure do a part 2, because I want to talk about the future of work with you in a follow-up episode.
I would love that.
Let's talk. Any last words of wisdom before we shut this down?
For today's podcast, I would say make well-being a non-negotiable in your life. What does well-being mean to you? Does it mean spending time with your family? Does it mean going to bed on time? Does it mean having healthy nutrition? What is a key element that you know for yourself that will get you well, and make it a non-negotiable? Because that's what will really drive cumulative change for yourself, for the people around you. And in fact, there's even research out there that what your grandparents ate influenced your genome. And so you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for generations to come. And so that's a big responsibility that we all have as individuals, as humans. And what kind of society do we want to build? Do we want to build a society that's well, that's blissful, that's happy, that's building great things for the enjoyment of future generations? Or do we want to have a sick society where chronic diseases are a consistent issue? It's really up to us to make that choice. And so my stance is really making well-being a non-negotiable.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Michael. Best place to find you online for those that want to connect?
Twitter and LinkedIn are the easiest. Both are just M. Heinrich. So yeah, very simple to find me.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was an absolute joy for me. It's especially special that you're here in person, and we get to see each other, feel each other's energy, and I have a lot of deep gratitude, respect, and big thank you for being part of this wild journey with us.
Yes, sir. Love you, my spiritual brother.
Love you too, my spiritual brother.